Imagine this. You're a server at a restaurant, and there's a change of management, and the new owners come in, and they have a staff meeting with all the servers, and they say, from now on, every person who is a waiter or a waitress must smile at least once at every guest. We'll be watching, and if you don't, you're out. Give some thought to how you might feel if you were one of those servers. I think for me, well, let's do it this way. Somebody shout out how you might feel about that. Anybody?
Like I wouldn't want to smile.
I wouldn't want to smile. Lindsay? Upset. Yeah, you'd want to fight it. You'd feel resentful. And that's exactly what most of the servers did. And in his book, Discover the Power Within You, Eric Butterworth tells of this story where this restaurant had this exact experience happen. And this is what he says. It was interesting to see the forced mechanical smiles of the waitresses who seemed the most unpleasant, the more unpleasant, because of the imposition of the management. Makes sense, right? You'd be so like, that actually it would be a less pleasant experience for everyone. But one person stood out. She smiled like the rest, with the one smile, but then she kept on smiling, not just the one required smirk. She seemed to enjoy it. She actually beamed and radiated a contagious spirit of joy. Then he goes and speaks to the waitress about this. And she said, well, at first I resented the order to smile, and I almost quit my job. It was no fun smiling when you're compelled to. Then I began to realize that all the smiles, except the first one, were my own, free of orders. And so I always went beyond that one forced smile to feel the reward of smiling. I always went beyond that one forced smile to feel the reward. I find it is an essential key to making my job an enjoyable experience. What do we see? We see a group of people who have a rule imposed on them. And we see a group of people who, for the most part, respond in a very common way. They feel resentful, they feel irritated, they don't like being there, they're in a place where they're feeling like they have no power. And then we see this one person who chooses an uncommon response. She goes one beyond what is necessary. Instead of becoming a victim then of the requirement, she steps into her own power and overcomes the limitation of the restriction that had been imposed on her. All of a sudden, she was a person who had power and who had choice. And that gave her a degree of freedom. And it's an example of what we can do, each one of us, when we feel that we must do something, whether it's because we feel compelled to because of a workplace, or out of duty because of an obligation with family, or friends, or church, or some other organization. If there's a part of us that is feeling a little resentful about the obligation that we have, then there is a common response, which is to stay in that resentful place, and an uncommon response, which is to move out of that feeling of martyrdom and to a place where we are actually in a place of power. A place where we can be poised, graceful, elegant, pleasant to be around. Why am I suggesting this idea? Well, think of the consequences on everyone in this story about these servers who are forced to smile. Are they having a good time? Hell no. Are their customers having a good time? Probably not. Eventually, it's not going to serve the owner of the business either. But even in that moment of serving day to day, before the restaurant finally shuts down because nobody wants to be there, before that happens, think of the quality of the interactions. They will be forced, they will be kind of miserable, people probably a little snippy, not pleasant to be around. Now take the word restaurant server and that experience out of there and insert any other experience that we may have that same feeling of, oh, I have to do it. Geez, I really don't want to do it. But they're making me, or I should. And know that there's a part of you that is going to have that same level of resentment, and the people who are there are going to pick it up. They're going to sense it, and there'll be a sense of tension that won't feel really great. And so you may all be having a lovely meal together. Next week is Thanksgiving, and I'm sure this is going to apply for some people, maybe not in this lovely room, but certainly out there, where we have this feeling of, I have to do it. It's something that's expected of me. I'm going to resent doing it because the others aren't going to help me. And I got to clean the house. And now they're going to come, they're going to eat, and they're going to leave. And now I'm going to be stuck with the dishes. And there's going to be a part that they will sense of that experience. And even if they don't, even if like you're Academy Award-winning actor, and they don't sense it, you're going to have that feeling, and you're going to carry that emotion with you, and it's not going to be fun. That's the common response. That's the one that we use the most. But what if? What if we said, well, we're going to cook, we're going to clean, and we're going to make it joyful? Because I'm going to do it anyway. I might as well change the story I'm telling myself about it. I might as well make it fun. What happens when we do that? We are uplifted. Then our gift of a clean house and the meal and then the dishes afterwards become a true gift. The energy will shift. We won't feel as if we're victims and martyrs. And chances are, because of that, people will want to hang out. They'll hang out in the kitchen, they'll do the dishes. As opposed to, I can feel something's not right, let's see how quickly I can leave. None of that was in my notes, by the way. I'm just kind of coming to that right now. The thing is that we can sometimes feel trapped by our obligations. And when we feel trapped, it goes against that feeling and longing for freedom that each of us has. The freedom for self-determination, the freedom to make our own choice. So the invitation that I have for you is to choose an uncommon response when you are faced with an experience of feeling resentful. Sidney Harris, this is also from the book, Discover the Power Within You, and it is one of the stories that is perhaps my most favorite out of this book. In this book, Sidney Harris, the distinguished news columnist, tells of visiting a Quaker friend for a weekend. Each evening, he would walk to the corner with the friend to buy the evening newspaper. The man would be cheerful and pleasant, but the newspaper man would always reply with a grunt. Harris commented one night, "He is a mighty unpleasant fellow, isn't he?" To which the Quaker friend replied, "He's always that way." To which he says, "But why are you always so nice to him?" The answer is a classic that reflects a deep understanding of Jesus's teaching of non-resistance. The Quaker said, "But why should I let him determine how I am going to act? Why should I let him determine how I am going to act?" We can't always change the circumstances in which we are working and living, but we can always change how we respond when there are times when we feel compelled to do things. It's as if by making a conscious choice, we move ourselves from a place of being or feeling powerless to a place of feeling empowered. I want to see if I can find. Yeah, okay, I'll get to it. So, how do we do this? If you buy into my suggestion that we choose an uncommon response instead of the more common response, and we go one step further, how do you go about making that happen? Step one is to notice it. So what's your language? Notice your thinking, and if you're thinking, as soon as you kind of do this roll of your eyes thing, it's a clue that you could shift it into something that is more powerful, less victim. So as you argue against reality, which is we are going to have a Thanksgiving dinner next week, the family is coming over, and that is established. If it's not established, then we don't need to worry. But if it's established, then why would we spend all the energy arguing with the fact that we're going to have a dinner and people are coming over? So step one is to notice that resistance. And the way you tell is by noticing that feeling of powerlessness and resentment. And then, and here's your science lesson for the day, resentment equals resistance. And resistance limits your access to your power, your poise. This is called Ohm's law. It's actually an electric law, which is the more you resist, the less you can be in the flow. So imagine a hose, like a hose that is in your garden, and you have a faucet, and you turn the faucet on, and the water starts to flow in the hose. Get this water flowing. It's able now to water the garden, clean whatever needs to be cleaned. And there's a kink in the hose. The amount of available water is unchanged, but there's a kink in the hose. And what happens? The flow is less. The kink is our resistance. The way around that is two parts. We can either go to the faucet and try and get more energy out of more water energy out of the hose, but at some point, there's more than enough water. The part that's missing is the kink. Needs to be released. When the kink is released, everything can flow more smoothly. Remember a few weeks ago we spoke about what the youth use as one of their rules in their gatherings, and it's called the tilapia rule. It's go with the flow. There is immense power in that, because what they're saying is be non-resistant. So if you're finding that you have all of these things that are irritating you about an event, a person, a situation, then see what you can do to unkink the hose. Because when that hose is kinked, the effectiveness of the water is reduced. So there you go. Ohm's law. The more the resistance, the less the flow. It works in electricity, but it works in life as well. And how do we then unkink? We choose the uncommon response. What Jesus said was, turn the other cheek. See it differently. So instead of doing just what is necessary, take it one step further and do a little bit more. In fact, what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount is, whoever shall compel thee to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him that asks. If they compel you to go 1, go 2. What's the context of this? Well, in the time of Jesus, the land was occupied by the Romans. And the Roman soldiers had the right to compel any person to walk with them for a mile carrying their belongings, carrying their kit. The soldiers would basically say, walk with me and carry this stuff. And they were allowed to do that for 1 mile. For the first mile, the person carrying that kit was powerless. Mile number 2, turning the other cheek, choosing the uncommon path, taking my power and choosing to carry a mile. Go beyond. In this way, we don't let the behavior of others, the behavior that is expected of us, the rules of others, none of that stuff will then have the power to destroy our peace. And so, my suggestion is that we reduce our resistance when we find ourselves feeling frustrated, feeling compelled, and then feeling resentful. When there's something that's just irritating us so much that it's affecting who we are and how we speak to people, how we approach people, our whole energy will be different. See it differently. Flip it into something where you take power and turn it into something joyful. And if not joyful, at least more powerful for yourself. Give more than is strictly required. And I want to share this little note with you. This little story I found about things that irritate us and we feel resentful. There once was an oyster whose story I tell, who found that some sand had got into his shell. It was only a grain, but it gave him great pain, for oysters have feelings, although they're so plain. Now, did he berate the harsh workings of fate that brought him to such a deplorable state? Did he curse at the government, cry for election, and claim that the sea should give him protection? No. He said to himself as he lay on a shelf, since I cannot remove it, I shall try to improve it. Now the years rolled around as the years always do, and he came to his ultimate destiny, a stew. And the small grain of sand that had bothered him so was a beautiful pearl, all richly aglow. Now the tale has a moral, for isn't it grand what an oyster can do with a morsel of sand? What couldn't we do if we'd only begin with improving the things that get under our skin? Isn't that sweet? When you're feeling compelled, forced, powerless, when something is irritating you, notice it. Notice the resistance and see if there's a way that you can turn the other cheek. Notice if there's a way that you can resist a little less. And the way you do that is to give a little more than is required. Try it. It is the place where miracles happen. You will have more power. You will feel more poised. And the people around you will notice. And life will be more calm, more connected, and more contented. I bless you.